Good afternoon, and welcome to another Government of Anguilla press conference. Today is the 20th of September, and so it's good to be here, and we like that September is flying through because, you know, these hurricanes and things we get concerned about. Certainly, we thank God for His mercies for getting us this far without any significant natural disasters for this year. We do know we still got the pandemic. COVID-19 is real and still affecting us. And also want to give condolences to the family members of those who have passed, especially the family members of Denise Lake from the Keys Island Harbor, Mr. Oliver Hughes from South Hill. We wish them heartfelt condolences, and others who have lost loved ones, and those who are sick and shutting. We want to let them know that we care about them also, and I want to wish strength and God's blessings upon them. And before we go on, I'll ask Minister Hodge to lead us in a word of prayer, and I thank you for your reverence.
Thank you, Premier. Dear Lord, we come before you this afternoon giving you thanks and praise for life, for health, for opportunity. We continue to ask your prayers upon this island, upon its people, upon its leaders, upon all our frontline workers, those charged with the responsibility of keeping this island safe. We also pray for those families who are bereaved at this time, that you may provide the strength and guidance as they move through this difficult process. We ask these blessings in your name. Amen.
Thank you. I want to give apologies for Lloyd Gums from Lloyd's Live. He is in Island Harbor watching the launch of the Deep Faith. And we know that we have to have faith in these times. Also, your Permanent Secretary, Mr. Foster Rogers, who's on leave. And welcome the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Andrew, and Minister for Social Development Education, who is with us today, Minister for Home Affairs, and myself, and you. Thank you for coming out. I'll turn over to the Chief Medical Officer to give us an update on COVID and vaccine and anything related to health.
Well, good afternoon, folks. Let me apologize up front because this computer of mine isn't excellent and this computer isn't working. It hasn't started yet, so if I miss anything, so I'm going to test my memory and the ginkgo biloba supplements I've been on for the past couple months, see if it works, right? In all seriousness, you would see from this latest press release that we're down to 15 active cases. By and large, in terms of the transmission and the patterns that we've been seeing since August, we have not seen a worsening of the situation. I think in real terms, we've seen generally an improvement over the last couple of weeks, maybe a little bit of a stalling over the weekend, but we're certainly not worse off than we were a few weeks ago. So we still are continue to be encouraged by the pattern we are seeing. That said, what has emerged over the last few weeks, and you notice that 5 of those persons we're looking at as so-called workplace exposures, we're still seeing now and again persons turning up to work with symptoms. I will say that I think what is contributing to this is not that people want to be difficult. I think it's it still continues to be the mildness of the symptoms. A few people vaccinated and thinking, well, it's probably not COVID. Let's put it this way. Anything you have that's a sniffle or any doubt, it's COVID until proven otherwise. That's the safest way to look at this, because we're still hearing people say, well, it was so mild, I didn't think anything of it. Or once again, we're doing the contact tracing and finding out that the person that arrived at our doorstep at the ministry was not the first person. If somebody had said, oh yeah, actually 2 weeks ago I had something. You know what I mean? So let's just try, because we can see where if we follow that rule, I saw between 2 co-workers, actually one that did not come to work with the symptoms and seemingly no onward transmission versus the person that was there two weeks ago, a few days ago with symptoms, and maybe she got it from that person. So the recommendations do pan out. If you have a doubt, just give us a call and we can clear you before you go to work. At the same time, we have to implore persons not to abuse this. This is all of society effort. We don't want people not coming to work because you can say, well, I think I had COVID and I'll stay home a couple of days. Work with us, let's be mature, let's forge on together, because you can see where these things are beneficial and preventive, right? So that's basically what we've seen this week. A little bit disappointed with numbers on the weekend, but again, clusters at work mostly, and otherwise known contacts of cases. So that's been the thing. Nothing more to report in terms of vaccinations. Our numbers basically stay the same. We're around 60%. And of course, we're waiting on the UK in terms of next steps. Going forward, as we said before, and those things take time, and it will be sort of a general approach towards all the UCOTs. So I have nothing more to report in that regard. I think that's pretty much it in terms of anything new or lack thereof. They say no news is good news, right? So nothing much more to add on the health side. I know there's a lot of angst about the reopening of primary schools, but I won't preempt the minister. I think I'll give you the lead on that, and then I'll chime in terms of health perspective. I know the frustrations out there, and we do empathize with you. So if there are any questions you'd like me to answer or see what the position is, and knowing that we're not going to make unilateral decisions, and knowing that nothing is black and white, and honestly, everything is in the best interest of the community. So we're begging for that understanding where we stand as well. We'd love to drop all of this. Seriously, we would be the first out the gate to say, let's just drop everything. We are ready, but so far the pandemic has not allowed that, unfortunately, and just begging persons to bear with us and to really, really believe and accept that we just act in the best interest of the society as a whole.
Good afternoon. Dr. Android, I got a call earlier today and someone wanted me to put their question forward. Will booster shots be available for those persons over the age of 60 with pre-existing conditions?
That is where the discussions have been so far with the UK and even the US to some extent. I would say that's probably the case. In terms of the actual logistics and when we start rolling that out, I can't be held to a date right now. We do have a few months. They were saying 6 to 8 months in the first instance. And as I said before, any determination on the part of the UK is most likely going to be a booster with one of the mRNA vaccines, not AstraZeneca. So all of that has to be worked out, and it's not just going to be for Anguilla. But these are the things we've been discussing. As I said before, a couple press conferences ago, we have submitted our figures in terms of what numbers we're expecting, and we just have to wait on protocols, logistics, and final word on that from the UK. So, things take a little time, so we're just waiting on the follow-ups to that.
Good afternoon. Where do we stand as far as the Pfizer vaccination for children?
And that's a hotly debated topic even in the UK. You would note that there was some advice coming out of the JCVI saying basically with younger kids, looking at the health, the risk versus the benefit ratio, they were saying looking just at a health perspective, well, they're not sure we should go ahead. But then other considerations coming into play, like the social disruption of having to stop school every time there's an outbreak, other considerations I would also throw in there, especially for us, the fact that children have been proven to be sort of sources of ongoing spread and so on, and things that we have to look into. You will note that the UK now, the CMOs are recommending at least a first dose. They said already for the 16 and 17-year-olds, and I think as recently as yesterday, they're saying that they're going to recommend for 12 to 15 as well, a first dose in the first instance, and then not before spring, but by spring, they're going to decide whether or not a second dose is needed. We expect that a similar kind of position may trickle down to the UCOTs, and again, we just have to wait on the word for them. But that's the thinking going forward. You notice, in addition to the UK, several countries are already there vaccinating younger and younger children. So we're just in the pipeline to see where that goes and how that plays out for the UCOTs.
Thank you.
This is somewhat tourism related, but because it deals with CAFA, that's why I'm going to ask. I know they recently launched their the CAFA's tourism health program across its member states. Can you speak to that, please?
Yes, CARFA's tourism and health program actually predates even COVID, and it's something that we felt in the region to be something very progressive, because you made an interesting statement that it's tourism and not directly health. But actually, CARFA years ago recognized how like no other part of the world, how many of our small territories are so heavily tourism dependent for economic viability, and that economic viability and your socioeconomic status and poverty are inextricably linked to health, called the social determinants of health. So it's a good program. We have dialogue with them for the last few years. Some of the things that have been sort of things to iron out in terms of logistics, who are going to be the persons who would report into such a system. We've had a number of sensitization sessions right here in Anguilla prior to COVID as well, looking at all kinds of syndromes to alert countries to the possibility of early warning systems for the possibility of communicable disease outbreaks. So it's a welcome program. I think it's a refreshing program and a very progressive program. So we're in full support of that program. So it's just to see how it plays out in the different territories, how we're going to report and so on. In addition to the syndromic surveillance, which we do weekly. Anyway, we send in information from them. It's just going to be adding maybe possibly resorts and other nodes to that information and data gathering, as practical as it is from country to country.
I just wanted to add for Brenda, for your question, and I was remiss in wishing Dawn a happy birthday. Little birdie told me her birthday was this weekend, so thank you and congratulations, Dawn. In terms of Pfizer, or as the CMO said, we'd be hoping to get one of the mRNA COVID-19 vaccines like Moderna or Pfizer. I think Pfizer would be the more applicable one for covering children. Of course, that requires we have to be able to store it at less than minus 70 or higher. And so that is one of the logistics that we have to work with. That's why we're asking parents to register the interest, because we get them registered, and that can be done at beatcovid19.ai. The link will be there to register children to be vaccinated. And so far, we have not had a good number. It's just, I think, over 100. We would like we do know that there are at least 1,500, children and or more that, and they should become eligible. Pfizer just announced this morning that Pfizer is cleared between 5 and 11 years, that it's safe. So that now will be going for consideration. And I think that we need to take this into consideration. And also, persons who want to get their first dose, they should register beatcovid19.ai so that when we appeal to the United Kingdom for more vaccines, we have a fair idea of how much we need. And that's important to know, because last time we had to waste some of what we had, give away some of what we had, because persons were hesitant. So this time, we have a better case if we can have a real number of persons who want their first dose, those who did not want to take the AstraZeneca, but ever concerned if we get a different vaccine, would they take it? That's what we want to know. And also interest, how many children there would be that are eligible, that are signed up for it. Because of COVID, we've had to basically put everything health-related on the back burner, and we still want to make sure that we can get certain policies and legislation put in place, such as secondhand smoke. Those policies are still important, because we do know that secondhand smoke can cause disease, just like if you smoked yourself. And so those are issues we want to continue to work on. And the other chronic non-communicable diseases that we are plagued by here in Anguilla, the effects of which are hurting our populations. And so we do find that as our people get older, or certain habits that to get into that cause morbidity. And we do know next month is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so these are all things that we still need to be cognizant of, even though, COVID is, all things COVID. So as Minister of Health, I just want to make persons aware that we still have interest in these processes which affect our populations. And it may seem that we've ignored them, but because COVID was so acute and it's so deadly, we had to make sure that we mitigated for its presence. And I think the CMO and the Permanent Secretary and the others in the Ministry of Health and Health Authority have been working on this since January of 2020. So it's, you know, should give them a pat on the back whenever you see them, because I think a great job has been done. Someone had a question? No. Any other questions for the CMO? She said she'll stick around a little bit while the Minister of Social Development Education speaks towards that ministry. So we'll turn you over to Minister Deanne Kentish-Rogers.
Good afternoon, everyone. Short update, but I know that there might be a number of questions coming in relation to education. So last week we would have submitted a press release whereby the schools would have moved into another week of remote learning. I know that a number of persons would have indicated that they were experiencing some difficulties with e-learning. This has been plaguing us for a number of months in relation to access issues, which we're trying to work on quite urgently. But outside of access issues, we also know that online learning and e-learning is not a panacea. It's not going to solve all the issues that we really face in the education system. And that students who come into the schools, they don't come in only for educational purposes. They also come in there for social purposes. And it has a very negative impact on our students when we can only reach them on online platforms. So from the Ministry of Education's perspective, this decision to go into another week of online learning is not a comfortable one. It's not the choice that we want to be making. But of course, we have to balance the risks that are in play and take on the recommendations of the Ministry of Health as it relates to what really are the avenues that we should take to ensure the ultimate safety of our students. So we've been very aware, especially in relation to our vulnerable students or students who do not engage readily on online learning platforms, that we are trying to find other ways of reaching out to them. We've been creating learning packs in order to reach out to students who may not have access to devices. The Ministry of Education also has online platforms that they use in order to help students outside of the live learning forums. But of course, again, and as the CMO just stated, we know that it is trying a lot of persons' patience, and especially since this would have been the start of the new year, where a lot of children would have been transitioning over from one grade to the next, or from one school to the next. It would have been very challenging, and they wouldn't have had the opportunity to network with their friends and with their teachers. So that familiarity is now being done via the online platform. And so we know that there are a number of hiccups and a number of challenges, but we have to be patient. We have to be patient because we're asking a lot of everybody. We're asking a lot of parents, because for in this particular situation, a number of parents would still be out at work. The schools are closed, but we know that our schools specifically are environments where we cannot necessarily do social distancing in every school. So we have to take into consideration our own limitations when we are creating protocols. If we had a situation where we were able to socially distance every single school and every single child, it would be a different situation. But we know that that's not the reality. So there are certain things, and again, it goes back to what are the risks that we are weighing in terms of dealing with the health of our children and with their education. So from that perspective, we're still being advised by the Ministry of Health. We had extended it to the 27th of September, but the Ministry of Health is still currently looking at that date and telling us whether or not that date would need to be revised at some point. From that, other than that perspective, we are also looking at the educational plans that we have coming on stream this year, which would have been Morris Vanderpool, Valley Primary School, and Adrian T. Hazel Primary Schools. These are the 3 schools that are outstanding in relation to being completed and handed over to the Department of Education for the purpose of housing our children for the school year. Now, it's very unfortunate that COVID's impact has stretched across health, across the economy, and even gone down to transportation links and getting us supplies on time. We've had a number of really critical delays in the delivery of materials to the sites. We'd have to resource materials so that we can get these plants online as quickly as possible. And even when it comes to getting the electricity up and out, there are a number of challenges down the line because of COVID-19 delays in the transportation links and supplies. So they've also had to source alternative suppliers to get material to these plants. So we're supposed to be seeing, and I'll give an update on Friday as to where we are in relation to those updates, in relation to the school plants. We are still debating whether or not we're going to have any real handover ceremony, or we're just going to try to see as best as possible if we get into the schools, because I know that a lot of persons would have been waiting to see what happens with the opening of the schools. But we also know that more important than having a handover ceremony is getting the children in the school and getting the children educated. So that's the update from the Ministry of Education end. If there are any questions, the CMO is also here, especially from the health aspect, to give any assistance. I do know, before I turn over to the CMO, that persons have been asking again about vulnerable children going into the schools, and how is the Ministry of Education mitigating against any situation where we'd have unvaccinated teachers or we'd have children coming from unvaccinated households. And that, of course, is the catch-22 that we exist in right now. It's not a comfortable catch-22. We want to do everything possible to mitigate risks, but there is at the moment so much in our control. What we can do is continue to put in place protocols such as masking. For those children who have respiratory illnesses, we know that these masks can be very uncomfortable for them and very difficult for them to breathe. And the recommendation has been for them to use the face shields so that they're covered and they can have it a little bit easier to breathe. But we're currently continuing our the sanitation of the schools on a regular basis. We have the custodians coming in on a regular basis and the cleaners to ensure that the schools are cleaned. All the high-touch areas are cleaned on a regular basis, even during break time, so that as much as possible we can mitigate as best as we can. So we do have to continue to ask parents to continue to teach their children proper hygiene measures, proper hygiene protocols, so that when they go into school and they're around their peers, they're still aware that we are in a pandemic and having to deal and learn how to operate and change our behavior because we're in a pandemic.
Yeah, I'd only like to add to that our sense of caution and really fear and nervousness going forward. I think we have a lot going for us that's looking good in terms of the school reopening. One being that we are still really a low prevalence country, and we're seeing that transmission has dropped. And so that's good, very, very favorable. But in epidemiological terms, your best bet is really to prevent a virus or a germ from circulating. Every time we're trying to relax a little bit, we see the real threat in terms of that sort of space for spread. We've seen it in the homes here. We've seen it internationally where these false starts are trying to open schools, and then you have to take that step back if it's done too rapidly. Just last week, someone called me for my birthday, an epidemiologist from overseas, and he's like, oh, we just opened schools and we have 3,000 cases. That was not what I wanted to hear. That was like without prompting. And even for our own UCOTs, a couple of them on the call with outbreaks here that we haven't seen cases for the year. Mild cases, but the fear is once the numbers get away. One in particular had maybe 100 from 1 week to 600, the next week now 1,000. A lot of outbreaks in settings like daycares and primary schools and things like that. So it is a real risk. I think we're doing well in terms of our public health measures, and we really want to get this out of the way. We understand the deleterious effects of delaying this face-to-face learning. And just begging your patience, because unfortunately in public health terms, a couple of weeks of a school closure is not a lot. It feels like an eternity. This whole pandemic has felt like an eternity to us in public health. But really we're at the second week of the school having been closed, and we're just begging your patience. Things are really seeming to go in the right direction. So just a little longer, and just please bear with us. And there's a reason, because every time you open your eyes in the morning or so on, there's something about a school and an outbreak, honestly, so you're reminded again not to go too far, too fast. I mean, just in our own loop, UCAT's calls, you're getting this kind of feedback. So luckily we get these little warning signals so we don't make any the missteps and so on. And you've seen our experiences in the household. We're doing better on that regard, but you see where you can have one or a few children and it just spreads. The trick with this Delta variant in particular is to keep the numbers under control. We're fine now until your numbers explode, and then you will start to see the full spectrum of disease. You're going to see more kids sick, more adults sick, more hospitalizations, and maybe deaths. So that's the reality. So I think we're in a very good place, and we're just begging a little patience. Let's see what happens within a week. And then there's going to be a point where we'll just have to make some hard decisions and bite the bullet. And the ministry, we know that these things aren't set in stone, but these are our genuine fears, and we're seeing it playing out in other places every day. So it's not because we want to keep things back for the kids. I try to look at things from a positive perspective. I think pre-COVID, we didn't have the online platform. Maybe there were some developments there. I mean, we just have to try to grab on to the positive things, and we really feel like we're going in the right direction. I feel cautiously and quite optimistic, actually. So let's just see how it goes in a week or so.
This has come up before, but a lot of parents are wondering, how many of the teachers are vaccinated? If they're not vaccinated, are they going to be tested regularly? How are you going to control that?
Well, we've covered it in some previous press conferences, but we did say that at the last point of the update, we did have 80% of the teachers vaccinated, which was a significant jump from the previous number of 53%. For the most part, we're still looking at how to encourage persons to still get vaccinated, to register their interest to be vaccinated. But of course, when we decide to go full on, and as the CMO said, when we start to make those hard decisions about, okay, we need to go back to face-to-face learning, and how is that going to look, then the measures and protocols that we put in place are going to reflect the fact that while we're making the hard decisions, we're going to have to also balance it with what are the protocols that are going to have to be in place to ensure and protect both the teachers and the children.
So what is the magic number or the litmus test for opening of the schools? I mean, you said that you're monitoring, so at what point, other than, saying we have to open because it's been just too long, is there a number of cases, a percentage that you're looking at that would make you feel comfortable to open the schools?
Well, what we had said, ideally, in a situation like this, and we've done it before, we wanted to see the cessation in a local transmission period, and we would have loved to have seen 2 incubation periods onto that. That would be the best scenario. The truth is, I mean, we need to look at the numbers. We would like to see 0 transmission in that, especially in that household setting. It's quite off-putting and quite unsettling. Children as young as 1 year old, 8 months old, so that would have been our benchmark. However, we'll have to rethink that, and we don't like these things are complex issues, so it's not going to be one person. It really is something that needs to be discussed at length to see where we might reset that in terms of our tolerance and our appetite of risk. Under 20 right now is pretty remarkable. Active cases under 20, some of which are imported cases. That's good. That's quite healthy. So like I said, nothing in black and white, and really we need to discuss more, and I would not just leave it up to myself. No one is all-knowing, but we'd have to have hard discussions around that, especially in a week's time, to say, look, what are we going to reset that number and figure to? Right now, I don't have it off the top of my head. I told you what I would have loved to have seen, which we've done before, and I think we can in a couple of weeks, quite frankly. I think we're going in that direction. But if other pressures come to bear, we might have to just do something shy of that. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. So we're just going to only talk from the health perspective. It's going to take a high level of discussion with the different persons and expert stakeholders even to look at that,
Good afternoon. I want to revert a question for the Premier. You mentioned that you're encouraging parents and guardians, of course, to register the children for the Pfizer, or they assume it's the children version of the Pfizer vaccination. And also you mentioned the fact that, if I have not mistaken, that there would be an opportunity for those who have not yet taken the AstraZeneca to get the Pfizer. Is that what you meant to say?
I see that the time off has, gotten you very brisk there, Pastor. Good. You were correct in what I said. I said, we want to make that case to the UK, that we get Pfizer or Moderna, but, preferably Pfizer for the children, 12 to 17. And also we want those who are hesitant to get AstraZeneca before, for whatever reason, that we make the case that we get enough, that they can get the 2 doses of Pfizer. So yes, you are correct.
I just want to clarify on it so I can...
Thank you. And welcome back. We missed you. Yes, we will allow the CMO to leave now to take care of some other issues, and we'll continue. Thank you again, Dr. Andrew. If there are no other questions for the Minister for Social Development Education, then I'll move on to the Minister for Home Affairs, Kenneth Hodge.
Thank you, Premier. Just some very brief updates. We are moving to District 5 this week for number 4 of our meetings. We will announce the venue sometime between this afternoon and tomorrow. But the meetings have been going well. We have not had a huge attendance, and that has been due largely to the protocols we've had to put in place, but we have been getting some huge viewership via our online platform. And so we're encouraging persons to continue to support. We are looking at venues that have large spaces that persons can come out. I think we are moved beyond the 25 limit now, and we are going by the space. So obviously we want to encourage persons to continue to support these meetings. We will be on Keystone on Wednesday morning at 11, myself and P.S. Harrigan, to discuss various aspects of the constitutional exercise. And this is an important exercise I want to stress once again, and we don't want persons at the end of the day to say that they did not get an opportunity to be involved. This is the opportunity now for persons to get involved. Thank you.
I have a question about the Constitution meetings, and once all the districts are, you've held meetings in all the districts, what then is the next step?
Right, so we are in the process of setting up a drafting committee. What we have put up on the website would have been a draft put together by the United Kingdom following the last round of talks here. That is what is in circulation. We are going to be drafting our new draft based on the discussions we are having now, the meetings, and what has transpired before. So we will be putting together a draft. So that will be done right after we have completed these talks. And even when we finish the rounds of meetings in the districts, we will be continuing, not necessarily going back to the districts again, but we will still be continuing the discussions on key areas, because we're going to keep this discussion alive right up until we go back to having discussions with our British counterparts. So it's going to be very much a live process moving forward. We really don't have a date for that as yet. We would have hoped to have completed these sessions, these town halls already, but again, given the health restrictions, we are moving cautiously. So it's going to take a little time, but we're going to get through it.
Hi, Mr. Hodge. I'm just wondering in terms of the numbers, you mentioned it, and I know, of course, we have the COVID-19 protocols in place, but in terms of the participation, are you seeing any input or getting feedback from the young people? I know just last Thursday, the issue of same-sex came up. You said it's a funny issue, it's quite sensitive. But given that social and cultural norms are changing, if you talk to young people, we see, persons dating the same sex here and there. So I'm just wondering if you're getting any feedback from the younger generation as it relates to this particular issue.
Yes, so I've gotten quite a few WhatsApps at last Thursday's meeting, and I encouraged those persons. I shared my email information, and I've encouraged them to continue to send their comments and their questions forward. Also online, the online platform, there have been a number of questions put there as well. So young people are utilizing the social media to communicate in this respect, yes.
Follow up to what Ms. Innes said. You don't think that it is important that you engage the youth parliament? Because we have a youth parliament, and they should be engaged in things like this for the youths.
Well, as we have said from the outset, that we are involving everybody, and persons are free to come out to these sessions. We go to each of the districts. Persons are free to come out and attend and participate. In terms of the youth parliament, as we move on, yes, we are making sure that we cover all the main stakeholders. So at some point, sooner rather than later, everybody will be covered. But for now, we are concentrating on the districts. And of course, it is open to each and every person to come out once we obey the protocols, the distancing, the masking, and so forth.
Mr. Hodge, good afternoon again. I listened carefully to the presentation on Thursday evening, and I realized that one of the sticking points was the same-sex marriage situation. Now, you give an overview of it, but you didn't give your opinion or any feelings from the cabinet side. What is your view on this matter?
Well, precisely why I didn't do it, because we want to hear from persons. I don't want persons' opinions to be colored by what we think about it. I can assure you that at a cabinet level, we have discussed this new draft constitution on several occasions. We've had one or two retreats. So we do have an idea of how we would like to see things going. But I think for now, it is important to hear from the people and what they think about the issues. That is why we haven't put our positions forward at this point in time.
I think the question I want to ask is if we will be able to maintain or retain our traditions on that matter.
It is open to discussion and negotiation.
Thank you very much, sir.
Turn it off.
Ken, the attendance at these meetings is very low, partly because of COVID and so on. Hopefully, when we get over the current community spread of the virus, we could have a meeting. I just feel that if you have a lot of people at a meeting, people inspire each other, they get more interested in what's going on. At the moment, it's very laid back, and people are not getting that vibe to get interested in the Constitution. I think at a larger meeting, they probably would. It's just a thought.
You know, someone came up after the session in East End last Thursday, and they said to us it was pretty much the same thing last time around, that persons don't seem to be interested in this process. All they do, they criticize at the end of the day and say they weren't involved. But certainly, Brenda, we are going through with this. It's important that we follow this process to give each and every district an equal opportunity to be involved as we go along. The interest is picking up, I can assure you, and we are looking forward as we go through the other districts to see numbers increasing.
Thank you. And I think, you know, if the media comes out to some, doesn't have to be at all, but come to some of those sessions, you can stimulate some of this interesting dialogue, which, you know, just started. So we look forward to North Hill at 6 p.m. That's right. This week, and next week it will be in one of the other districts. So far, they've been 3 sessions. North Hill will be 4, and then we get into the heart of the districts, 3, 4, and 6. So we do know down in Blowing Point there will be a lot of discussion. With that, I welcome the Minister for Infrastructure, Communications, Utility, Housing, and Tourism, and ask any updates. Minister Hughes.
Thank you very much, Premier. Just to segue a little bit on the constitutional affairs. Back in 1999, we had a constitutional issue of sorts when we had a quote-unquote minority government, and the entire issue was about constitutional reform. This is 1999, and here we are in 2001. And just recently, we had a situation where the deputy governor and the 2021, the deputy governor and the attorney general voted, and there was a lot of hullabaloo about the constitutional issues. So I am surprised that has not been an inspiration for those who complain about these constitutional quote-unquote anomalies to come out and voice their opinions and their views and let their voices be heard. But be that as it may, I would just like to say that I'm very excited about all of the things that are happening in Anguilla. To jump on what the Chief Medical Officer said, there's a lot of positive things, and I'd like to look at the positive. And today, the bids are being opened for the construction phase of the Valley Main Road, Carteret Boulevard. As you know, a lot of the preliminary works have been almost, well, they're not done, but they are pretty much to the final stages in terms of the underground works from the Department of Technology, DITES, Anglic, Flow, Digicel, Water. A lot of that underground work has been going on over the last few weeks. I'm sure to some of us is inconvenience, but those bids are opening today, and hopefully we'll start the actual construction of the road in October, very early in October. And as you know, if you've been out to Blowing Point, you'll see that work on the Blowing Point Ferry Terminal have commenced. And we just recently went to Parliament to approve a supplementary that will see some additional works being done. One to the roof of the People's Market that has been in that state of disrepair since the 6th of September 2017. And it's been 4 years, so long overdue. And also 4 additional roads, one that leads from the Merchants Market area into the Valley Main Road, Carteret Boulevard, one that joins the George Hill Road into the Jeremiah Gums Highway, another one in Spring Path, and one in South Hill. So we are very, very happy to see that within a very short period of time, if you date back to June 29, 2020, we've been able to do a lot of things, not only in infrastructure, but throughout all the other respective ministries. And so we are a little bit late because the Parliamentary Secretary and we just came from a meeting with American Airlines, and everyone is excited. American is excited. We are excited. There's a lot of work that needs to be done before they land on Anguilla. And I'm sure if I look around this room, there are some people who have already booked their flights in December and January. And we are all excited. It's a very exciting time for Anguilla.
Can you just remind us, please, what the grant is for the Carteret Boulevard Road? And I'd like to know, does it include the underground work for the various utilities and these side roads that you're talking about? Can you just give us a rundown on the finance?
The financing for the road just deals with the road exclusively. It does not take into consideration the underground work that is being done through our budgetary situation, Anglic, and all the other entities that have come on board. So that does not take into consideration the side roads or anything like that. It's either our capital budget the respective entities who are on board.
And the side, hang on, the side roads are the same?
The
With
side roads come
government?
from the taxpayers of Anguilla.
Okay, and so what was the grant again?
The grant was 7.5, if I'm not mistaken.
7.5
EC, 7.5 million
EC.
EC.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hughes, while we're talking about financing, right? I brought up the idea or the subject some time ago about the Valley Road, the Valley Main Road going down towards the Valley proper. You remember I mentioned the fact that when rain falls, that road is like a river. Can something be done at least to defer some finances from side roads to fix or put some side drainage at the sides of that road, because it's very deplorable? Besides that, in the nighttime, there's no lights there. If you're driving in that main road going towards the valley, you take lights off in nighttime, it's dark, very, very dark. I mean, it's a hazard, a great hazard. So can something be done with it?
Well, the hazard comes when you turn your lights off and you're driving down the road during the night. But
I'm just saying that as a demonstration to see how dark it is.
So,
just for clarity, right? Because Don is asking what road is that? Is the road from the roundabout going west towards the old hospital area? Coronation.
Well, thank you very much for that. In this budgetary cycle, there'll be no deviation of the funds or no transfer of the funds to do that road. Not in this budgetary cycle. It's something that has bothered us for a very long time. But I can't say and I can't promise when that'll be addressed. The lights is something that we're looking at through ANGLIC and through the department of my department. We're just completing streetlight policy, and once that is completed, and also we're trying to do a proper analysis to determine whether or not we have been overpaying for streetlights in Anguilla over the years. We want to ensure that we pay for what we get and not be overpaying. And the street lights bill to the government of Anguilla is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars yearly. So we just want to determine and know exactly where we are with that before we move forward in terms of restoring the lights there. But I can't say with any certainty or surety when that Coronation Avenue will be addressed. I can say that it won't be addressed in this budgetary cycle for sure.
So since we're talking about Coronation Avenue or Boulevard Avenue, the Anguilla Tourist Board's house building is there, and there was talk about fixing that little piece of road and fixing up the building. Is that in this budget cycle, or is that to come?
That is in this budget cycle. As a matter of fact, the Minister of Home Affairs and I discussed that just this morning, and we are moving forward with that. What has happened too is, there was a serious mold problem in the tourism department that was impacting the health of the workers there. So we had to relocate to the Anguilla Social Security Board in the interim. So the plan is, and that part of it has been fixed, but it also to expand the office a little bit to ensure that there's space conducive to what we want to do in terms of our marketing now and future development of tourism in Anguilla. The road is also part of the consideration. That road will be twinning with one of the other road infrastructure that will be being done for one of the school projects. So that is still something that we are looking forward to. We've had discussions with OLTA as it relates to that road, and hopefully that'll be done, if not this latter part of the year, but hopefully in the first quarter of 2022. You're welcome.
Mr. Minister, with the road lighting, I think now if we look around the globe, you will see that many of these road lighting now is being done solar way. Are we considering putting up our street lights with solar so that we can benefit with that, and also it would ease the burden of government having to pay an electricity company to provide these services?
Absolutely, we are absolutely looking at solar. We have a present inventory of 78 lights, and they're all diesel generated electricity lights. So they're LED lights, but these are what we have in stock right now. As it relates to solar lighting for street lights, there's a huge upfront capital cost. So what we have to look at is how we will be able to finance that as well. Whether it's going to be done through the utility company or whether it's going to be done through the Ministry of Infrastructure. But regardless, it'll have to be a partnership between both the utility company and the Ministry of Infrastructure, because no one from the infrastructure department climbs poles, right? So ANGUILLA will still have to be taken into consideration as it relates to the installation of those solar lights. But it's something that we have been discussing, and how we can not only install solar lights, street lights, but also how we can retrofit all of government administration buildings, schools, and the like with solar. Because, as you know, we have some brand new schools. We have the Morris Vanderpool Primary. We have the AT&T Primary. We will have the new Albina Lake Arch Comprehensive School that will have the cost of maintenance and the cost of electricity will increase exponentially. The budget that we have is well over $1 million a year right now, right, in terms of maintenance of those schools. So yes, we may have these beautiful brand new schools, but they have to be maintained. They have to be powered up. So how can we mitigate the cost of operations of those schools? And one of those costs that we can take into consideration is the cost of electricity. Now the Premier and the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary will be doing GMC, and one of the discussions that they will be having is the issue of sustainability. And sustainability also takes into consideration how do you green your economy, how do you green your country. And I believe that ANGUILLA is uniquely poised to be a leading country in green technology and electricity generation.
That came as a really disappointing and surprise to me, because I thought since we were building these new schools, at least the solar system should have been into the schools, because I thought that all the time.
Well, you were not alone. We thought so too. We thought that at least they were built to accommodate them. And we were very surprised very early, as far back as July, to learn that this was not the case. But be that the case, they can still be retrofitted along those lines. It'll come at an additional cost, but the cost should be built in when we're thinking about building the type of schools and facilities that we have with a tremendous amount of roof space. So these are the things that we have been discussing. I'm sure it keeps the Minister of Education up quite a bit too.
Well, I think this present administration going forward, we don't want to hear, because the information is there, we can get it, access it, and let us, think in that way. Let us at least bite the bullet first, so that we can enjoy the benefits later.
How far are we with the opening of the new medical center in the valley? And what is the status on the South Hill Polyclinic?
The South Hill Clinic is open, and the Valley Health Complex should have been open, this month, and it should be. We're looking at October right now as the plan to get it open. I don't have a specific date, but certainly that's it's, as you can see, the structure itself is completed, and now they're putting in the furniture and other medical equipment. And the landscaping is ongoing. Thanks.
My question is for Mr. Hughes. I know you're talking about renewable energy and then the mitigating factors. We know that COP26 is coming up. Can you give us any finer details as it relates to this? I know the BOTs are being represented, but could you tell us exactly what ANGUILLA would be putting forward specifically?
Thank you very much, Ms. Hennis, for that question, but I would really like the Parliamentary Secretary to answer this question, because she has been on the forefront of this and also on BANG. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that as well.
Thank you for that question. Actually, one of the projects that we are looking at is to get the funding to. Oh, just prefer to keep it on. Can you hear me? Yeah, so one of the projects that we've been looking at would be also the funding for the solar panels on the schools. We're currently using the existing drawings as well as some retrofitting to see if it is that, to see what the possibilities would be for the solar energy on the roofs of the schools. But that's one of our major projects, and that's constantly being worked on, and we intend to present at the bank, at the COP26 of this year, sorry. So the overseas territories will not be represented individually. We'll be represented as a cohort, and our collective plans being categorized. So all of the solar solar power, renewable energy, etc. plans will come under the same heading, and then you'll see what Angola wants to do, what Gibraltar wants to do, what BVI would like to do, and that's how we would go forward.
Mr. Hughes just mentioned that you and Dr. Webster participating in the GMC. Could you tell us the date and what are some of the issues put forward this year?
Well, I think the minister was jumping the gun with that, but it's supposed to be November 15 to the 19th is what I've seen so far. Again, hasn't been determined whether it will be held virtually or in person. The plan is to have it in person, but at this time, we're not. There are topics, of course, which will be discussed, including the constitutional reform, financial resilience. The overseas territories all seem to have similar issues as we do. But certainly we will bring you up to speed on those things as we get more details.
And Dr. Webster, my question is to you again. This pertains to GST. We know the Concerned Citizens Group, they are pushing ahead with their plans in terms of looking to get the GST bill rescinded. We see they have written to the 2 UK officials. I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on that?
In terms, I just wanted to say that the JMC is a Joint Ministerial Council for those who were not aware, and that's usually held in England in November every year for the ministers in England to meet with the leaders from the overseas territories, and was held virtually last year, and I and the Parliamentary Secretary attended virtually and for presenting on the environment and things like that. In terms of the GST, the bill was passed in the House on July 29th and assented to by Her Excellency the Governor on July 30th, and it will come into effect July 1st of 2022.
No other
If I may-
comment?
No, if I may just add about renewable energy. Sorry? Yes, the board of ANGUILLA is really pushing ahead on renewable energy integration. So I'm very happy about that. And this week we have a series of meetings with different entities who have different ideas as it relates to renewable energy integration, whereas we can transform our energy supply in Anguilla. So that is something that we've been discussing for the past 30 years, and it would be great if we can move forward with that quickly over the next couple of years, because it won't be a quick process. And as you know, one of the things that we want to do is also reusable energy, where we can clean up the Carito landfill and provide a safe environment while restoring the land to its former glory in that area. So it's not only renewable energy, but also reusable energy integration for Anguilla.
I just want to follow up on a question that was asked by Ms. Hennis with regards to the GST. We realized that this letter was sent to the 2 officials in the UK, and now we are hearing the Premier giving definite declarations that The bill will be put into effect next July 2022. 2022, right. Now, are you saying that there's no recourse or no chance for rescinding based upon the letter that was sent by the concerned citizens?
Well, I think constitutionally, the Secretary of State can repeal any act passed in the Anguilla House of Assembly. And so that will be determined there. I have no way of knowing how they will respond to that. In fact, Mr. Dominic Raab, who was the Foreign Secretary, is no longer in that position. Liz Truss is now the Minister for Foreign Commonwealth Development Affairs. So I'm sure I know that it was received based on the email chain I've seen, and so I'm sure a response will come in one way or the other. I just wanted to also say that, education in terms of, businesses being able to access the information on GST implementation is coming along. There will be seminars on that. Specific businesses or groups of businesses, specific sectors can also reach out to Inland Revenue Department, and they already and have been instructing business owners of how to get themselves ready for the implementation on the 1st of July 2022.
While you're formulating your questions, I just want to remind us that this is not the first time we have written to the Secretary of State of London on a tax bill. It was back after the first passage of the interim stabilization levy, when the then leader of the opposition, Mr. Evan McNeil Rogers, wrote to the Secretary of State to repeal and ask questions about the interim stabilization levy. This was way back in 2011. And we're in 2021, 10 years later, and three administrations, and the interim stabilization levy still forms a major part of our tax collections. So just to give us some historical context, that this is not the first time.
So I guess the question is, back in the day, 10 years ago, when the letter was written, was there acknowledgement of the letter? Did they say, we're thinking about it, we'll get back to you? And fast forward to today with the GST, have they acknowledged that they received the letters? And is there a timeline? I mean, have they offered a timeline as to when they'll reply, with what they think, what they want to do? Has there been any feedback from the UK, I guess the question is?
In 2011, they definitely responded, and the response was, to put in a nutshell, was that was a decision for the local administration to take.
And today, and the GST today, any response from the
Well,
United Kingdom?
I've been copied in on the email chain that has gone to the concerned citizens group, and there was acknowledgement that the letters were received by the officers of Mr. Raab and Lord Ahmed. No other, I haven't seen any other
And that's it.
correspondence. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Just in terms of the Ministry of Finance, the unemployment and underemployment benefit was continued for August and September. For those who are making less than 1,000 EC dollars, they can continue to apply. And through Social Security, if that's how they applied before, and the Ministry of Finance if that was how persons applied before. And new persons can also apply, and they'll be taken under consideration. And the policy-based Caribbean Development Bank loan for $20 million that is ongoing. I did mention that we did get approval from Lord Ahmed, the Minister for Overseas Territories, given approval for us to pursue obtaining that loan. And there were policy-based initiatives. And I just want to say here that, you know, it is very, sometimes, you know, politics gets in the way. And I'm privy to, as all of us have seen, the policy-based, the matrix that was used to get this policy-based loan from the Caribbean Development Bank. We would be assessing the second tranche. The first tranche was in 2018 for, at that time, $9.3 million US. And that policy matrix was set out, and we saw basically. And the goods and service tax implementation and legislation to do it, and the draft policy, and starting the first phase of it, which was the interim goods tax brought in October 1st of 2019. Is big and broad, and they are signed off by the previous administration. And so when you have the leader of the opposition, who is now the leader of the Anguilla United Front, and her other opposition persons who can get into the House and get out on the radio and talk about that they would not have implemented the goods and service tax. I mean, it's ignorance. And I want you to put that in the paper. Because, you know, they make it seem like they had a choice, or that we have a choice. We did not have a choice. You know, I have a letter from Lord Ahmad that basically thanked us for continuing the commitments that were previously made. And this is the type of thing that irritates me about politics, because, you know, we have people that we have to lead. They put us here. They gave us this, they put their trust in us and say, you know, we feel that you are the best 11 persons that can represent us during this time. We understand times are difficult. And so decisions have to be made. Certainly we did not want to have to bring in the GST. We said that. But certainly we did not understand the gravity of the financial situation of Anguilla at the time. Certainly we knew that it was not all rosy. But when you go in there, and the first day that you get called in and you're given this sheet of paper that shows Anguilla's financial status, it makes you sit there frozen, wondering, what do you do next? And they tell you have 10 days to decide if you're going to take the MOU that was signed on June the 11th. That was days before we had, even before the election. And if you don't choose this, then, you know, you default on your debt. You cannot pay civil servants. You cannot, you know, keep the hospital open. You cannot have the police force in place. You are making a decision that impacts not only the 15,000 people that are here in Anguilla, but their families elsewhere. Because if they in Anguilla can't take care of themselves, they rely on subsistence from their families abroad, who they too, with COVID, were in significant trouble. And so, you know, I listen to Just the Facts, and I hear, you know, the leader of the opposition and whoever she has as her second, whether it's the member from Road North, member from Valley North, or it seems recently the member from West End, and they talk as if that, you know, they had a better plan and that if been re-elected, Anguilla would be a land flowing with milk and honey. The reality of this is, and I'll state it for a fact, because I've seen the policy matrix, that they would have implemented the goods and service tax and there would have been no question. There would have been no discussion. There would not have been any public consultation. And it would have been, the second phase would have been implemented on the 1st of January 2021, and the third phase would have been implemented January 1, 2023, and the goods and service tax would have been in full effect, by January 1 of 2021 with the same effect. We asked, and we were given some reprieve because we felt that we needed to understand the implications of the goods and service tax before we signed on to it. And we were able to make significant changes that will improve the lives of the people of Anguilla compared to what the legislation that we met that would have gone into effect. We were able to get a threshold for electricity. We were able to get water zero rated. We were able to get a food basket that included essential items that was zero rated. We were able to get exemptions for fishing, farming, and light manufacturing. We were able to remove health and education. And so these are the, if we sit here and, GST, it's, the topic of the day. And we talk about who voted and who didn't vote. That's not the point. The point is that we have a country that we have to run. We have people that we have to take care of. We have to make sure that the well-being of the people of Anguilla is looked out for. And we, the 7 of us on this side of the aisle, we are looking out to make sure that we take care of the people that have been entrusted in our care for the 5 years. And if the people of Anguilla choose, in 2025, to let us continue the good work that we are doing, then that's up to the people of Anguilla. But at this point in time, and I hate to be on this soapbox, but I get this every day, and I listen to the radio talk shows every day, and it gets frustrating because there's a lot more that we can say that we don't say because we don't feel that, government needs to be run from the street. We are mature people put here for a mature purpose, and we will continue with God's help and the goodness of the people of Anguilla to do the job we're put here to do. And so I just want to say that, I'm happy for this opportunity. And, I can say for the rest of us that we will do what we have to do to make sure that Anguilla survives, thrives, and is successful. That's what we're put here to do, and that's what we will do. I don't know if you have any questions.
I want to ask a rather bold question at this time. 2 of the ministers voted against the GST tax bill, sorry. What is your position or your feelings about that?
Yes, 2 of my ministers voted crisis of conscience against the GST. I still feel that they are capable, that they still represent what the people saw in them, that they can do the job to keep Anguilla going, and they have my support. And I'll continue we'll continue to work together as a team to move Anguilla forward.
I think the Premier said what we all are saying here this afternoon, that when I decided to run for office, it wasn't a popularity contest, it was about making life better for the people of Anguilla. And I feel in the time that I have been here, that we all have been here, we have been doing just that. we came into office at a very, very difficult time, the worst possible time in Anguilla's history. And we've been making difficult decisions at the worst possible time. But I'm saying some of these decisions have been years overdue. And we are basically now, as you could say, mopping up the mess that we have met, and we are making it better. And we are of the opinion that better days lie ahead. But the steps that we have been taking with the statutory bodies and all the different things we've been doing were things that should have been put in place a very long time ago. And I am fully committed to this administration. As the Premier said, in 2025, if it's the will of the people that they choose not to return us to office, so be it. But I'm going to continue to work in this administration, making the difficult decisions that I was elected to do for the good of this country. And I stand 150% behind the Premier and other members of this administration. We're here to do a job, and I think the people of Anguilla need to allow us to do the job we were elected to do. And all of this foolish rhetoric, I'll be bold to say that a lot of it is foolish rhetoric. Every single day does not help this country, does not help any of us, it does not help our economy, it does not help confidence in this country. And I think some of these persons need to check themselves and realize the realities of where we are at. We are living in a very fragile time. Economy, COVID is dominating everything we do. And I think persons need to give this government an opportunity to do what it was elected to office to do, to govern and move this country forward. Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to say that the Premier spoke for me. Thank you.
Well, of course, I know I would have been one of those ministers who would have voted in the House and would have stated on a number of occasions that everyone in these roles sitting across on this table has a decision to take and a decision to make. And we'll be looking at information and balancing the risks and trying to make the best decision for the country. And ultimately, I think that if we are to be, as they're saying, being mature about it, we have to look at the decisions that are made, and we have to make the decision that we believe is the best decision for the country. This administration made a decision. The bill was passed through the House. We know that there's a lot of communications going back and forth, the concerned citizens and other persons, to the Secretary of State. And we have a responsibility to see what the response is, but ultimately those things are not exactly in our hands. Those are things that we have to wait for a response for. So ultimately, I think at this point, we have to continue to chart a way forward for the country, continue to allow the citizens of Anguilla to see us working, and for them to say this administration is working in the best interest of the country. That's what I believe. Yes, James?
I thank the Premier for saying what he said, because while things are often politicized, the truth about where we are at is a very serious one. And it's very easy to say we wouldn't have done, we had alternatives, but when there's nothing in place, and it's very obvious that nothing was prepared, we know the truth of what would have come. Anguilla is in a very interesting place. And I had this conversation earlier this morning in terms of where we are at. Many persons think of the solutions and say things like, in order to fix Anguilla's problem, cut the civil service. But if you cut the civil service, we want the welfare to support persons who do not have jobs in place. Many persons say similar things about, well, do not cut the civil service, cut their salaries. But when the civil servants were working and other family members were home, It is the salaries of civil servants who kept their families up during this pandemic and this country running. We have a lot of work to do in government, and civil servants are usually getting the brunt of it. There is place for personal development, there is place for customer service development, but these are real persons with real issues that sometimes are attacked in an unnecessary manner. This is not the time to pretend as if the solutions to get Anguilla to where we all want it to be are easy ones, are ones that do not take heavy hearts and heavy minds and strong backs. You cut civil service, you destroy the pension fund, which is already on edge because of poor planning and overuse. You cut the civil service, you destroy Social Security that highly depends on government salaries to keep it afloat. We have to be very honest about where we're at. And instead of playing politics and, quite frankly, lying to persons, this country needs a unified effort. We need to be honest about where we are at and the solutions that we need to take to get us where we want to be. This government has conducted a mammoth task and continue to work. In a year, we were able to move legislatively one of the most active houses in the history of Anguilla, attending to the people's work on a bi-weekly basis and ensuring that we improve and update our legislations to reflect the country that we want to have in the future. We have taken our infrastructural development seriously, and we have ensured that matters of national development, such as the airport, are prioritized. This is the legacy of this young administration 1 year in, and during a pandemic. We have ensured that Anguilla has led the region, the Leeward Islands region, over the past 4 to 5 months on our vaccine rollout. That is the work of this government and a testament of what happens when a country works together for the common good. And if we can do that, if we can ensure safety, if we can be our brother's keeper, and we can work to actually improve the status of Anguilla and where we're at as a country, it will not just be this generation that benefits, but it will be the generations to come. And that is our purpose as human beings, to leave the world better than we met it. And I feel very confident that this administration, led by the capable Dr. Ellis Webster, is doing just that. And I know that in years to come, there will be a government that stands or sits in this very same place that said in 2020 a change occurred, and they're very thankful that I did not wait.
I was just going to say also that we saved ANGLEC because, the previous administration, one of the policy for acquiring the loan from the CDB was that the government-controlled shares in ANGLEC would have been sold. And we said we would not do that, and we won't. So that we had removed from the policy matrix. So, Don, I know you have a question.
I do, but I didn't want to interrupt the flow of this discussion, so I just wanted to wait. You mentioned the statutory bodies in your talk. I was just wondering if the audit is still ongoing or if it's been completed, and if it has been completed, when will the report be published?
It's still ongoing with Axiom International Limited, and we are hoping that they will finish up this month, and then they will produce a report, and then we intend to make that report public. I don't know exactly when, but I think by the end of October we should have that. You're welcome. If there are no other questions, I want to thank you for coming out and participating. I want to thank, Radio Anguilla, the Anguillian, the Daily Herald, Channel 4, KCN. I want to thank Dites for always being here to bring this live and interactive, and for always being wherever we are to show up. And thank you for that. I want to thank Ministerial Assistant, the Ministry of Finance, the liaison for the Spanish community. Thank Parliament Secretary and the ministers. And I do know that Minister Kyle Hodge, he is up in Island Harbor, making sure that the boat Deep Faith gets launched, because that will also show that, we are continuing to look out for, the people of Anguilla who are innovative, creative, who take risks, and it's those risks that will pay off in the end. So again, thank you, and look forward to seeing you next Monday for another press conference of Government of Anguilla.